Hello, and welcome to another episode of Break the Cycle with me, your host, Joshua Smith. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Tuesday night. We got an awesome show, as per the usual for you. I'm just super stoked on this entire week of shows. It's just amazing to me that any of these guys want to come on my podcast, first of all. But I guess we're growing pretty fast, so that's a good thing. Let's talk about some sponsors. Of course, we've got Lorenzotti.coffee for all your delicious Italian coffee needs delivered directly to your door. Bring the taste of Italy home. Use BTC at checkout for a 10% discount. And, of course, my friend, my partner on the show, TopLobster.com, one of the greatest guys when it comes to graphic stuff. He hand draws everything. Check him out today. You can get this awesome custom dark camo Break the Cycle sunset hoodie that I'm wearing today. Use BTC at checkout for a 10% discount. Or join the Patreon, Subscribe Star, or the YouTube memberships to get into the Discord channel where you will get the new designs up to 2 weeks prior to them going to general population, and you'll get them at like a 30% discount. Very, very deep discount. And, of course, AnthemPlanning.com, executive producer of the show for all your emergency and crisis planning needs. Find out what these people can do for you today for your business, your home, or your personal life. They're doing a job that the government sucks at, for a much cheaper price and much more efficiently. Guys, I hope everybody is as excited as I am today. We have a real heavyweight on the show. Seriously, he's a former adjunct professor or scholar from the Ludwig von Mises Institute. He is also the founder of the Central. You did found it, right? The Center for Study of Innovative Freedom. Yeah.
Yes, I designed and put the website up.
Perfect. He's also the author of Against Intellectual Property that I'm sure everyone has read by now. He is Mr. Stephan Kinsella. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing well. I'm COVID-free, so.
COVID-free, huh?
Yeah.
Did you get the COVIDs?
Yeah, I got it at Porkfest.
Oh, did you really? A lot of people did.
Yeah, about 10 people as far as my count goes at this point.
Well, I know Scott Horton got it and a few others, so I was I was checking it out. But it seems like everybody got healed up pretty good, and nobody got it too bad. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
But so what? Listen, from LSU grad to founder, author, scholar. Oh, there he is. I had a feeling you might have a Tigers hat sitting around somewhere. I had a feeling. I did. I really did. But how did you get here, man? How did you go from, you initially went to school for electrical engineering, correct?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and then lawyer and anarcho-capitalist, staunch anarcho-capitalist. How did you make that journey, man?
Well, so on the education side, I just wanted to major in something that I could get a job at and that I found interesting and challenging, which was electrical engineering, because I like computers. And LSU, because it was the closest big school to where I came from. It didn't even occur to me to go somewhere else. And then law school, because I started getting interested in politics and arguments and all that as I got interested in economics and libertarianism. So I just thought law would be more challenging and more verbal reasoning than all the math and stuff in engineering. And so I've loved being a lawyer. And I went into patent law because if you have an engineering background, you can do that as a lawyer, and it kind of is a really narrow specialty. So that's been fun. And you get to still do some technology. So it was a good blend. But on the side, my avocation, my sort of hobby has always been libertarianism ever since I was like in high school. So I kept studying it. And as I learned how to write as a lawyer, which is kind of like an academic type writing, you have to footnote and research things and write in a systematic way. I kind of used that skill to write more scholarly type articles on libertarian topics. So those two fields sort of grew together. They're different, but they complemented each other in a couple ways. Number one, my career helped fund I was on my own benefactor, really. So it helped fund my libertarian traveling and and on all that kind of stuff, and also just think my knowledge of the law, and actually going to LSU was just a coincidence, but Louisiana Law School teaches the Roman law more than other schools do because of Louisiana's unique situation. And the knowledge of the Roman law, in addition to the common law, has helped me as a sort of a legal scholar, as a libertarian, because I think I would not have known a lot of things about the law and legal systems. So they kind of dovetailed and they complemented each other. And then, of course, knowing patent law helped make me better at dissecting as a libertarian what's wrong with the patent and the copyright system. So they've sort of intertwined together.
Sure, absolutely. And it's funny, I had this conversation. I hopped on a friend's podcast last night after I did my show. It's the Tower Power Hour. If you guys haven't followed that, it is one of the craziest podcasts you will ever listen to. And we were actually talking about the laws in Louisiana and how it's almost like a completely different legal system. They're still holding on to that like French common law system, sort of, in Louisiana, correct?
Yeah, it's the French Civil Code. It was based upon the French Civil Code that Napoleon had done in 1804, and Louisiana had a similar version in 1808. And it also draws upon the Spanish law, the Las Cietas Partidas, we call it. So Louisiana law is a mixture of Spanish and French in terms of substance, but the form was French. So they retained their civil law system. There was an effort by the United States to force them to adopt the common law system in the early 1800s, and the citizens revolted and refused because they were used to the civil law terminology and some unique aspects of the system, like forced heirship, which is you can't disinherit your children. Your children have to inherit a certain portion of your estate, which is a relic of the European way of doing things. Which I actually don't completely disagree with as a libertarian. I think you can make some rough arguments for it. Anyway, so they held on to it, and so that's why Louisiana has parishes instead of counties, just because of the French influence.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're really big on IP. I mean, you wrote a book about being against IP. You're a patent lawyer. You're obviously, I mean, probably one of the most anti-IP people, at least on the internet. And we get some
probably in the world, to be honest. I pretty much know all the players at this point. There's no one who is as against it as I am in the world, I think.
Well, and there's so many people who argue with you online, and you're constantly calling people out for debates, and no one's ever taken you up on it.
They do sometimes, but I offer to have a discussion with them to explain things, because sometimes you just can't explain things in a choppy Twitter thing. I just started today. People can go to my site, c4saf.org/wrong about IP. I kind of got that idea from Tom Woods because he has wrong about whatever. And Mike Masnick at TechDirt has a page on Section 230 of the CDA. It's a link to a long thing called you were redirected here because you're wrong about Section 230. And then he has like all these topics about why you're wrong. So I'm going to start building it up because it'll just save me time. Over time, it'll save me time because then I can just say, okay, go to Section 17. That's why you're wrong about IP.
Sure. It's funny. So I have I ran for chair twice in the party. Lost once to Nicholas Sarwark by a large margin. Lost to our now disgraced former chair Joe Bishop Henchman by a slim margin in 2020, and then I just had this little kind of interim run that I lost by another slim margin. So I'm the second best chair candidate for the last 3 years in a row. Last year, so during this time that I'm running for chair, I had all these people attacking me all the time, really badly attacking me, just nasty shit all the time. And I was always kind of like, I'm running for chair, so I gotta like learn how to talk to people correctly and not come at them all crazy. And last year I decided I was no longer going to capitulate to any of these assholes, and I was going to call them names and make fun of them. And you kind of got an online presence like that too, where you really you're really brash and bold with people, and it's funny and people laugh about it. And
yeah, it's kind of turned into a thing. I've changed over the years too. I mean, in person, as you can tell now, and in person, everyone thinks I'm a sweetheart and I'm nice, and I am. And online, with people that are serious and sincere, I'm often blunt because time is short and the format is short. So I just give an answer. And I figure also if you're going to run away sniveling and crying with a clear, blunt answer, then it's a waste of time anyway. You might as well get to the point. But people that are not serious, you can tell right away, because I've dealt with these thousands of these people. They don't ask real questions. They'll bark rhetorical or loaded questions at you, like we were talking about before we started. Like this guy, like, oh yeah, well, how would you like it if I took your book and I published it with my name on it? I mean, they're actually not real questions. They're not really asking you a sincere question. They're assuming some kind of answer. Like they're assuming that everyone would realize that would be obviously absurd. So they're trying to like implicitly say that they've shown that you're a hypocrite, or that you're advocating for. So they don't want to make a clear argument, because then they would have to defend it. So those kinds of people, I just go right to the chase on, and I figure 99.9% of the time it's a waste of time with them. Although on occasion I'll have someone come back to me 2 or 3 years later and they'll say, "Oh, I argued with you 3 years ago, but now I see I was totally wrong." That does happen on occasion. But so I do it just for the people watching, so they can see how pathetic the arguments of the statists and the socialists and the pro-IP people are.
Sure, absolutely. And there's a lot of funny arguments when it comes to IP, because there's just so many things encompassed in IP. And Ludwig von Mises Pieces, which is the guy who made your shirt, thank you for the $2 the $2 super chat. And then Top Lobster one-upped him with the same question with a $3 super chat, asking, should copy pasta be subject to copyright? So that's pretty funny. I don't know. Do you think
should copy pasta? Remind me what copy pasta
so it's when somebody puts out like a long, like we like copy pasta your I'm a heavyweight tweet, right? Like we took that and then spread it all over the place, the same tweet all over, that's copy pasta. So you copy and paste it all over the place and as a response to other people. So it's like stealing something that you said and making it your own argument.
There's two answers in the law, and then in libertarian view of what the law should be. Of course, any copying should be legal. There's really nothing wrong with copying whatsoever. Even libertarians that say, well, it's fraud and it's not copyright violation, but it's fraud. Even that is wrong usually. I think we have to have a very high threshold for what fraud is, and we have to define it carefully. Libertarians are too loose on that. They'll say, well, if you sell a book with your name on it that you didn't write, that's fraud. It's like, no, it's not. Not necessarily, and probably not. Very rarely would that be fraud. It's just lying and dishonesty. I mean, we have to be careful not to say that lying and dishonesty is something that would be illegal or a rights violation. And in fact, most of the time, reputation would take care of that. People just look like idiots. If I said if I wrote the Bible, or if I wrote Romeo and Juliet, everyone's going to say, what the hell are you talking about? I wouldn't be defrauding them if I tried to sell the Bible online with my name on it as the author.
Yeah.
Any more than if I said, hey, I'm God. Okay.
Yeah, people would probably laugh at you. They'd be like, excuse me?
Yeah. So the answer is, okay, and in the law, copy pasta, probably it is copyright infringement in some cases. Everyone assumes that if it's not for profit, it's protected by fair use, but that's not how fair use works. That's just one of the 4 factors of fair use. So it's not always clear that, in fact, one of the factors is the extent of the work that was copied. So if you copy like one paragraph out of a big novel, that weighs in favor of fair use. But if it's just a short meme that you're copying 100% of a short thing. So that weighs against fair use, which means it is like copyright infringement. I mean, it's absurd, but that's the way the law works.
Sure.
There was a study, some law professor did a study about 7 or 8 years ago, John Teheranian, and he added up the liability every American has on average, the average American citizen, for just their normal everyday activities that could be copyright infringement. And because of the astronomical statutory damages awards and willful infringement and all this kind of stuff, well, that's patent law. But anyway, the statutory damages for copyright, which is like $75,000 or $150,000 per infringing act. Okay, so every one of us is potentially liable for $4.5 billion per year in damages. Every American, the 350 million people. And that was 7, 8 years ago. So it's probably 500 billion now. So every 2 people is $1 trillion. I mean, the numbers don't make any sense. It's more than the solar system is worth. But that's how copyright law works.
Sure. So we're talking about the law here, but we're not talking about what you believe personally. So give us your best case against intellectual property and why you're so anti-IP.
The best case is that so I'm a libertarian for principal reasons, like because I'm against bullying, basically, and I'm against people hitting each other, right, and hurting each other. which is the kind of libertarian non-aggression idea. Basically, it's the Randian idea that you have the right to do anything you want in life as long as you don't commit a rights violation against someone else, which means you don't use their property without their permission, which is trespass, or use their body without their permission, which would be some type of assault and battery. So that's the basic legal rule. And what that really means, if you think more about it, is that we believe in property rules that are assigned based upon a couple of simple principles. One is everyone owns their own body. And number two, for other things in the world, we can find out who the owner of a thing is by asking who had it first and did you get it by contract from a previous owner. So that's it: contract, first use, and self-ownership of your body. So those are the basic rules that determine who owns a resource. And intellectual property laws basically take those property rights away and they give it to someone else. So in the law, there's something called a negative easement or a negative servitude, which is when you sign a contract with like a neighbor and you give them a partial property right in your home. They can't use it, but they can prevent you from using it in a certain way. So that's what restrictive covenants in neighborhoods are. So like you can tie your hands and prevent yourself from using your property in a certain way, and your neighbors can do the same. So then you all know that your neighborhood can't be used for certain purposes. That's perfectly fine if it's consented to. Just like a girl who gets kissed, if she consents to it, it's fine. But if you kiss a girl without her consent, it's battery, right? It's a trespass. And the same what patent law does and copyright law, it grants these negative easements to other people, even though the owner of what's called the burdened estate never consented to it. So it takes their property rights away. So for example, a patent holder can prevent me from using my factory, which I own, and my body, which I own, and my resources, like my raw materials, to make an object like an iPhone or a mousetrap or an airplane or a carburetor, or something that's patented. So it gives this other person this negative easement or this veto right over my own property, but I never gave it to him by contract. So it's a taking of my property. So the fundamental problem with IP law is that it undermines the three basic principles that underpin all of libertarianism and all of private law and all of justice in the Western world for thousands of years. It basically lets other people have a say-so in how your property can be used. That's the problem with it. Now, once you identify an act of aggression, which this is, then you can start talking about the consequences of it or the damages. It does do lots of damage. In the case of copyright, it censors free speech and distorts culture. And it gives the government, the government gives the other people the right to websites and things like that. So it threatens free speech on the internet, and the internet's a big tool against the state. So you don't want to threaten that. And patents impede innovation, which impovers the whole human race, because the way we get richer over time is not by finding more raw materials, because the earth is finite, but it's by improving our recipes and our technological knowledge every generation. And we can use more and more of that the human race develops. So anything that prevents you from using that knowledge, or prevents you from spreading it, or prevents you from developing it, right, or slows it down, basically kills human beings by making us poorer than we would be. That's the ultimate cost of the patent system. It's horrendous, I believe. I think it's genocidal almost.
Sure. Shout out to Rich Clark for dropping the exact same super chat with an extra $1. Thank you, I appreciate it. Let's talk about so I talk about the only time I ever really personally talk about patent law is when I talk about the big pharma, right, and pharmacology and the medical industry in general. How have these patent laws really destroyed the medical industry?
Oh, well, so there's sort of an unholy alliance between different aspects of our modern society, all the result of government interventions, and they link together. Patent law is one, the FDA is another, the tort system is another, and also the control the government has over the whole medical healthcare system, where we have prescriptions for drugs. And so you have doctors who recommend things that just to avoid tort liability, right? And then they have to recommend prescription drugs instead of homeopathic remedies, because that's what is approved and what insurance companies pay for because of the perverse incentives of the insurance system, right? The healthcare system, but it all links together. And then the FDA imposes all these costs on the drug manufacturers, which they then need to recoup by having a monopoly, which is what the patent system is. So innovation is slowed down, and we doctors end up recommending a lot more of these artificial drugs than I think that they would in a free market system. So you'd have more resort to natural remedies, less resort to artificial things, and the prices of everything would be so much cheaper. But it's all just ruined by this whole system. Then you have, you probably would like this. I think on the COVID issue, there's an hour-long video by a guy who's extremely knowledgeable. His name is Dr. David Martin. I'll send you the link. Okay. He's extremely knowledgeable about the science of coronavirus and SARS and even HIV and stuff like that, and also the patent system. And I couldn't quite follow all of his talk because he doesn't tie it all together, and he assumes some basic knowledge of the history of the coronavirus stuff. But it looks like the coronavirus that the vaccine allegedly protects now was known almost in the last 10, 20 years. In many patents that are already described. So there's something funny going on there with the way that the patent system interlinks with the profit motive of the pharma companies, and then getting the government to require it and recommend it and approve it. So the patent system is just part of the government's meddling with human life in the healthcare area.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I got another super chat from 1983 Bantam. I think I know who this is. Thanks for the $2 super chat. He said, "Ask Kinsella if Vax makes you magnetic." They're making fun of me because I watched this. I watched this 47-minute video of people sticking magnets to their Vax site, and I posted it, and I was like, "Hey, this is pretty crazy. Everyone's calling this a big coordinated scam. It's happening all over the world." And some people gave me shit for it.
Someone tried to bribe me to ask you that question.
Oh, I bet I know who it is. So the guy that always fucks with me online about it is actually somebody he's got to be really close to the Mises Institute, because they one time, to prove that they weren't like a fakertarian person, they like took a picture of their book collection, and it was like all these great Mises Institute books, and they all had like autographs in them and like shout out notes and stuff. So it's got to be somebody close to you guys, I'm sure, but I never said that I believed it. I never said that I believed it.
I don't know. Some people say I have a magnetic personality, but I don't know if that's because of
online.
By the way,
sure.
I said I had COVID. I don't know if I had COVID. You know, all I know is the test said yes. Right. I still don't know if I had it or not. But
and you may never, because the PCR test has been so. It's had so many issues. Who knows what's what at this point? And that's the problem. Really, that's been the biggest problem with COVID, is that none of us really know what the hell's going on, man. You know what I mean? It's just so. Everything's been so washed by the government narrative, and then the media narrative, and then the politicizing of it on both sides. It's like you just don't even know what to believe anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, and on the patent thing, so you'll hear the government is so incoherent about this whole thing, right? So it's sort of like the China IP theft thing. You hear Biden and Trump and all these guys always saying, "Oh, China's stealing our IP." They never explain what they're talking about. China is literally not stealing our IP, because IP is a domestic law. Like, it's literally impossible for China to violate U.S. IP law. Whatever they do in their own country is totally within their rights under international law and under the law. And they do have a patent and copyright system, so they're not violating our IP. So they know what they're talking about. And on the coronavirus thing. So now they're saying, like, oh, the U.S. should waive the patent rights of the big pharma companies. So the whole thing is weird, because all these people are in favor of patents, and now they want to waive them, although it's not clear what they mean. They're not explaining what they mean by waiving them. The government doesn't have the right to waive them. The government has the right to issue a compulsory license, because the government issues these monopolies, so the government maintains the right to basically pull them back. They have the statutory right to do so, and they can pay compensation if they do that. They threatened to do that with the anthrax thing about 15 years ago when there wasn't enough of the Cipro going around because someone had a patent on it and they threatened to bust their patent by issuing a compulsory license. So the government could just do that right now if they wanted to. But what's weird is, I mean, when did the vaccine start? According to the conventional story, about a year and a half ago, they started working on a vaccine.
I don't even think it was a year and a half ago. It's been
okay. So they got a vaccine out in a year, basically. Patents, as far as I know, usually take at least 1, 2, 3 years from when you file it before they issue as a patent. So everyone's talking about hundreds of patents, but how can there be hundreds of patents on coronavirus if they just started getting the vaccine, 6 months ago? So they couldn't have filed patents until 6 months ago when they finally had a vaccine that was working. So I don't know what patents there would be out already anyway. I've never seen anyone point to one. So I don't know I don't think they know what they're talking about either.
Sure. Well, let's talk about some of these orphan.
It's sort of like inflation. So the government complains about inflation, but of course they cause inflation, right? Remember during Carter, they had these buttons, whip inflation now, win. There's like, we need to fight inflation, that we're causing. So the government's complaining about patents that they grant. It makes no sense.
Sure. I wanted to just bring up the pharmadouche, Martin Shkreli, who I think might still be in jail. But so I don't think people understand that, these patents will run out, right, eventually. And then some of these drugs become what's called orphaned, and someone can pick it up and get like an extended patent, right?
Well, it's complicated. I think what happened in the Martin Shkreli case, if I recall, everyone talked about it as a patent problem, but I think the patent had already expired. But what they can do is they can get the FDA. So what usually happens is the FDA gives you approval, then you can be the exclusive seller of it under an FDA grant because you have a patent now. You can stop people from making their own. But once the patent runs out, your competitors can't make it until they get FDA approval, which is what generics are. But sometimes the FDA will refuse to grant the generics for a while to give you an extra monopoly period of time for some kind of reason. So it's sort of like an artificial patent type right that the FDA can grant. And I think that's what this was some kind of EpiPen or something. I can't remember what it
was. For Martin Shkreli, it was a pill that like 10,000 people in the country were using. It was I think it had something to do with helping for some kind of viral pneumonia due to HIV or something. Yeah.
So I think he had a quasi monopoly on it because of the FDA system, not because of the patent system, I think. And so he started charging monopoly prices, which, hey, you can do that if you have a monopoly the government gives you. So everyone's complaining about what he did, but he did what would be natural to do if the government gives you a monopoly. You take advantage of it.
Well, it was the left came out and just like totally villainized him. But if you actually look back at the whole situation, I think he was trying to prove how messed up the system was, because he literally came out and said, if you can't afford this drug, then we'll give it to you for free, but I'm going to charge the insurance companies all this money and show you how this system really works. So I think he got villainized, but I think he was really trying to prove something.
May have. I don't remember. I think he went to prison for something unrelated.
Completely. It was some securities or something. Some kind of crazy shit that rich people always do. I don't know. So what are you familiar with, like open source like software, the free open source software movement?
Yeah.
Is it possible to like use that as a strategy to like promote this anti-IP thing? Do you think?
Well, only in that you can. It serves as an example. Which is a counterexample to the utilitarian or empirical argument some people make for copyright. They'll say that you can't make money without copyright, so the business model wouldn't work. And so then you could say, well, I think the majority of software now is open source, so it's not done under the copyright monopoly, and yet it's still thriving. So you can use it as sort of a counterexample to the stupid argument that you need copyright to make a profit off of written works, including software. I don't like. I mean, if without copyright, there would not. All software would be open because there would be no copyright. So the problem with the open source movement is that they rely on what's called like a copyleft type license, which is like they rely upon the license of the copyright on the software that allows them to prevent other people from using it, and they condition their license, their permission, on people adopting a similar license. So they're saying you can use this, but only if you grant similar restrictions on everyone else, so that my little copyleft idea filters down the line like that. That's sort of like CC on the Creative Commons, CC SA share alike. That's like CC share alike. I prefer to just to open as much as possible without conditions, which would be CC BY, which means you only have to give credit, or even better, CC 0, just make it public source. But so and most of the open source people, they're skeptical of the abuses of copyright, but most of them are not really copyright abolitionists.
Sure. So I got a couple more super chats. Rich Clark dropped another one. He said, "How do you feel about the right to repair? Do you think right to repair is a good way to red pill people?"
I mean, this is another issue where it's an issue of what Mises called, it's an example of interventionism. Controls breed controls, he said. So what happens is, well, it's sort of like people say the FDA screws up the drug approval process, so you need patents to give companies a monopoly so they can recoup the costs that are artificially high because of the FDA system. So one government program requires another. And in this case, the copyright system is what allows manufacturers of products, high-tech products like tractors, anything with software in it now, right? Tractors or iPhones. It allows them to basically prevent people from having it repaired by third-party unauthorized repair people, because it would be a copyright infringement. So they get to, and if you didn't have copyright, the only way that a manufacturer, let's say like Apple, wanted to do that with their iPhones, the only way they could do that is if they made the buyer sign a contract saying, I promise not to repair this myself or have anyone repair it except for Apple. So you find a customer willing to give you $900 for a phone, and you're asking them to sign something imposing liability on them for fixing the thing that they just bought. That would be pretty unpopular with customers, I believe. It would cost Apple money to do that, because they'd have to lower their price to make the phone worth it. So they would lose out on profits. So I don't think these business models would work without copyright. So what happens now is, because copyright law leads to companies preventing consumers from doing what naturally they would have a right to do, instead of abolishing the source of the problem, which is copyright, they want to give consumers this right to repair. And if it only restricted the copyright of the holder, I would be in favor of it. It'd be a way of restricting copyright. But as far as I understand it, these right to repair laws, they want to force the manufacturers to reveal source code and design information on the products they sell to these third-party repair shops or to the customers. So because they caused a problem, they want to violate the property rights of the manufacturers with these right to repair laws. So I don't favor the right to repair laws completely, because part of it is unjust, like forcing a manufacturer to reveal the information publicly. But on the other hand, if they weren't enforcing their rights with IP, patent, or copyright, then consumers would probably have the ability to get them repaired by third parties anyway.
Sure. I just got to give a huge shout out. I don't always catch all the chats, because some of them are small. The super chats are always bigger. I can see them pretty well. But my friend Cadius Rising, who is in a lot of the shows, good friend of mine from Twitter, just stated that he's sitting in the labor and delivery room with his wife watching Break the Cycle. This baby's going to come out a freedom fighter. Thank you, dude. That's so cool. Tell your wife I said hello, and congratulations. I hope everything goes smooth. As you know, we just had 2 in this house in the last couple months, so it's been a little wild for us. Almighty Beach, thanks for the super chat. He said he mostly uses open source software, especially Linux. And in fact, he prefers open source software, and I know he's a big time computer guy. So, what was the other question I wanted to talk to you? Let's see. Oh, my friend from Twitter, Dent in the World, who actually helped me set up my new microphone that Mr. Tom Woods sent me. What a sweetheart. I think he's trying to pull a joke on me, but he wants me to ask you, what do you think about IP freely? Pretty sure that was a joke, but there is an actual author named IP Freely on online that's like a clown comedian and author. So I figured maybe he was either playing a joke on me, or you knew about the author. I don't know.
No, I've just heard the joke before, but no, I've never heard of the author.
I figured. I figured I'd ask it anyways. So let's see. I have. Oh, you know what? Let's delve into this post-libertarian stuff for a minute, because I know you're a big Rothbard, Hoppe, Mises libertarian. So the NAP, or the non-aggression axiom, or whatever you want to call it, that's a central tenet to what you believe, correct?
I think that yes, but the non-aggression principle for me is just a shorthand for a set of property rules. But yes.
Sure. So this post-libertarianism thing that's kind of popping up now, and I've had a bunch of people on, I've talked about it with a bunch of people on other shows and stuff, and it's really kind of started coming out of like the Pete Quinones side of the movement and stuff, where they're kind of abandoning that NAP thing, right? And still keeping a lot of we still want the property rights, we still want all this stuff, but we have 80% of the people in this country don't want freedom. They don't want to be free. They don't want liberty. They want to continue to use the government to force their will or to make them feel safe. So they're kind of moving on from this, well, we're not going to aggress on you, and starting to take this more like aggressive stance. I don't know. Have you listened to any of the shows about this stuff at all?
I don't think so. It's not really ringing a bell. I mean, I've known for quite a long time that most people are not libertarians.
Sure.
I don't know what kind of revolutionary insight that's supposed to be.
Sure.
I'm aware of some people that don't like the non-aggression principle, but basically, to my mind, look, there's a big diversity in our movement, and mine is libertarian theory. That's what I like. It's not about strategy. It's not about activism. It's not about thickism. If you want to blend it with other things and be a thicker, that's fine. If you want to be an activist, that's another thing. If you want to have different tactics and strategy, if you want to be an incrementalist, if you want to be, move to Puerto Rico, that's fine. If you want to move to New Hampshire. But most of the people that are hostile to the non-aggression principle, they say that they just think it's bad messaging, but I think they really say it because they don't like how it constrains some things they want to do, right? Just like statists and non-libertarians don't like our non-aggression principle, because while most people oppose aggression most of the time, right, they're in favor of laws against murder, they're not against aggression all the time. That's what libertarians are. We're consistent. We're principled. We believe we're against aggression, period, all the time. So if you want some aggression to be permitted, you're going to rebel. You're going to oppose the non-aggression principle. So you want the state to exist. You want it to be able to tax. You want it to be able to have an army and government roads and government schools and a welfare system and police and courts, all funded by the state. And you want to be able to put people in jail for evading the draft, or for not paying their taxes, or for smoking marijuana. Then you need to have some exceptions to the non-aggression principle. So whenever someone is opposed to the non-aggression principle, I just want to ask, listen, are you opposed to aggression or not? Because if you are, then I don't care what terminology you use, but you agree with the non-aggression principle. But if you're in favor of aggression, then that's why you're opposed to the non-aggression principle, because you're basically a criminal, or you're an advocate of criminality, or you're a statist. So which one is it? So I always want to cut to the chase and find out, what is it, just a strategy or tactic or a word for you? Or do you really favor aggression? And then they'll do this stupid thing. They'll say, well, everyone believes in aggression because we need to enforce laws. So then they do this. That's an equivocation, right? They're trying to say that force is aggression. Of course, force is not aggression. We libertarians don't oppose force. So they're saying that if you have any law whatsoever, or if you defend your rights, then you're committing aggression. So they're trying to cheat. They're trying to say that, well, we libertarians believe in force, which we do, but we don't believe in initiated force, right? Only defensive force. So those libertarians, or those people, I don't think are libertarians, because they really want to find room for some deviations from libertarianism, whether that's left libertarians, right, who want or mutualist types who want workers to be able to, or tenants of buildings, or workers in factories to be able to take over the ownership of those things, basically stealing it from the landlord or from the remote distant owner, absentee owner, which is theft or an aggression, or whether they're just full-blooded statists. So I don't know. You tell me if I'm missing something. What is post-libertarianism?
Maybe. I actually have somebody in the chat nap time saying post-libertarians recognize the nap. They just believe you have a right to defend yourself, and should right now. I'm guessing from the government. So we'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, that's also a good question. How far should we let the government push us before we kind of step out of this? Let's just be peaceful and sing kumbaya stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and to me, that's a strategic, or maybe even a practical, moral or practical issue, which I don't claim any special expertise on. You have to decide what you're willing to put up with in your life. Irwin Schiff died or went to prison for income tax evasion. He was not in the wrong, but was it prudent for him to do that, and did it do any good? I think sometimes you have to stand up, but I guess it's a question of strategy. I don't think we're going to defeat the state and achieve a significantly higher degree of liberty by isolated acts of protest or violence against state actors, even though it might be theoretically just in some cases to use force against any government actor who's basically using aggression against you by enforcing state laws. I don't think that's a way to achieve liberty. It might be satisfying in some cases, but I think liberty comes about from in different ways.
Sure. Rich Clark, thanks for the super chat. He said biggest super chat gets the name Cadis Baby. So I don't think that's true, but maybe so. Let's talk a little bit about Hoppe, man. I got a guy who wants to know your views on Hoppe's resurgent popularity. So we all know that Hoppe has kind of gained this huge popularity over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years at least, or maybe more. What are your views on that? Is that pretty cool for you?
The sort of memification of Hans is kind of funny. I'm not sure why it happened. I guess it's hard to explain why these memes happen. I can't explain it. I don't think Hans understands it himself. I know he finds it amusing. I didn't even quite understand. There was some guy wrote a hit piece on him recently in one of these lefty rags because of this. Is it a snake? I think it was one of these kind of alt-right snakes, the snake meme. I've seen the Pepe the Frog meme and the frog meme.
Yeah.
And the helicopter memes are kind of funny. But people blending Hoppe's physical removal stuff. I don't know. I think some people just find Hans's whole personality to be interesting, intriguing for some reason.
Yeah, it's kind of been funny to me. Like, so I didn't read a lot of Hoppe until recently, and then I got into the democracy, and it was like I had so many people like, oh yeah, he's this, he's a Nazi, he's this, and then I can't find it.
Yeah.
I don't. It's not that I've always agreed with every single thing that Hoppe has said, but 99% of it, it's pretty dead on. And one of my favorite things from Hoppe, and I understand is probably one of yours too, is the argumentation ethics, right?
Yeah.
So
that's the first thing I read by him in 1988 in law school, and there was a symposium in Liberty Magazine where he came out with that, and that intrigued and fascinated me and blew my mind, and I still love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, can you talk a little bit about that and what it was that drew you to that and stuff?
I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but I had just learned about something in contract law in law school called estoppel, which is this idea of natural justice, sort of in equity law, where you're not permitted to make a claim in a legal context if that claim is inconsistent with behavior you manifested earlier, because you'd be able to have it both ways. So if you acted like something was true, then you can't claim it was not true later. So that idea was in my mind when I read his argumentation ethics, and it just struck me, this makes so much sense. It was basically an argument that I think it's misunderstood and mischaracterized, but the argument is basically that the libertarian idea, the non-aggression principle, self-ownership, natural rights to property, this basic idea is implicit in the very nature of civilized, peaceful human interaction, right? Because it's all based upon peace. Like if you have peace as your basic norm or your basic value, like if you want to have a way for human beings to cooperate and live in peace among each other, you're going to seek a type of rule that defines who owns what so that we can do that, so we don't have conflict with each other. So that's what property rules are. Property rules are the response to the problem of conflict, given the desire for people to avoid that and to have peace. So his point was simply recognizing that like in any human interaction where we're civilized and peaceful, we're presupposing the value of peace. We all are. So how can you make an argument for a system which violates peace and which causes conflict? So he tried to make it more formal in his argument by saying that any justification for any socialist ethic, which is any ethic that's not the libertarian ethic, right? He defines socialism broadly to be any institutionalized interference with private property claims, not just centralized ownership of the means of production, but in general, it's the institutional interference with private property rights. Any argument for that would be arguing against peace, while you're in an argument where you're presuming the value of peace. So there's a contradiction. So all he's really doing is pointing out that the only ethic any set of peaceful human beings that are engaged in civilized discourse could ever argue is something that's compatible with that peaceful, context of the argument itself, and that's libertarianism. So only libertarianism is consistent with that, because we favor rules that permit peace to be possible by having property rules that are natural and just and fair that we can all respect, and we could live in peace together if we all respected those rights. Whereas any other ethic causes conflict and is basically aggression, and is not argument, it's the use of force and the use of might, not the use of right. So that just intrigued me, and so I started writing on it. I wrote my own theory, which is based on the estoppel idea, which is sort of a cousin of his idea, and that's how Hans and I became friends. When I wrote him excuse me, when I wrote him, I sent him a copy of an article I'd written for a law review, which is a long positive book review essay of his book, which has that. But I was intrigued by a lot of his other earlier arguments too, his economics ideas, his political insights. This is way before his democracy stuff. His two chief books before that was A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism, and then the sequel, The Economics and Ethics of Private Property. Those are just full of so many great insights about the nature of property. And of course, he criticizes Nazi Germany in the book explicitly. He wasn't a fan of fascism.
Shocking. Well, and a lot of people kind of hold this like this weird, view about him being a big time monarchist and all this stuff. And do you know why that's always coming up when we talk about Hans Herman Hoppe?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. There's some people just want to smear him, and so they'll just say whatever they can to smear him. He's explicitly said he's not a monarchist. He's not in favor of monarchy. He thinks monarchy would be a violation of rights because it's not anarchist. Anarchy is the ideal system. All he points out is that monarchy, the conventional idea that this Whig theory of history, which even Rothbard and Mises and some of these guys seem to share, was that although democracy, modern Western liberal democracy, is not perfect, it's further down the road. It's closer towards our ideal system, so that when we moved from the ancient world, from the ancient regime of monarchies after World War I, and towards a more democratic world, that was progress. Everyone thinks that was progress. And this is sort of in line with the libertarian idea that where we have a rosy view of the founding fathers and the Declaration, the Constitution, and all this stuff. We kind of treat that like it was proto-libertarian. Libertarian Party has the freaking Liberty Bell and the torch and the Statue of Liberty all everywhere, and the Constitution's everywhere, and the U.S. flag, as if all this stuff was libertarian. Hey, just like Hans didn't like the Nazis in Germany, I don't like our founding fathers either. He's not libertarian. So the point is, Hans said that, look, when you move from monarchy to democracy, it wasn't completely unalloyed progress. And in fact, it was in some ways retrogression, because democracy is worse than monarchy in many respects, because the incentive that the rulers face is short term. It turns into a welfare state, whereas a monarch, as kind of a idealized private owner of the whole country, has incentives in place to have controls over the quality of people coming to the country, immigrants, and not to tax too much, because you don't want to cause a civil war or revolution. and you don't want to, you want the country to be prosperous, so you leave. So anyway, his point was simply a relative one, that monarchy is better than democracy in many respects, and so we shouldn't turn a blind eye towards the problems of democracy and think of it as a step down the road towards a libertarian paradise. Democracy is full of problems and is not anything like the ideal solution, unlike, say, Francis Fukuyama's idea that we've reached the end of history.
Sure.
With this kind of a quasi-ideal state, which is sort of the neoliberal, even neoconservative view of things now.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And in a lot of respects, I mean, anybody who actually pays attention would know that there was some benefits to monarchy for sure, and that democracy is just an ugly, terrible god that failed, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look at Liechtenstein or countries, or Switzerland. Oh, Switzerland's not a monarchy anymore, I don't think, but countries like that, they tend to be smaller in territory, number one. You know who the enemy is. If you have a bad – and Hans points out that, at least with monarchy, sometimes you can have a good monarch.
Sure.
Like maybe sometimes they'll be evil and horrible, but in that case, they can be killed. You know who to kill, right? But sometimes you have a good monarch. But you never have good leaders in a democracy because the system works. The worst rise on top, as Hayek pointed out. So you never have that. He tells a story of a friend of his – I think it's not apocryphal. I think it's true. One of his friends was at an ATM late at night in some city, and some guy walked up to him and robbed him, right? And then it was like 3 a.m, and the guy told the robber, because you took all my money. I was going to take a cab home. So the robber gave him $20 back. So at least sometimes you might have a robber who's even kind of nice, a little bit. But you never have democracies and democratic leaders who are good.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and when you got 51% of the population voting against 49%, and you got to go along with their bullshit, it's it can get a little hard, for sure. Almighty Beach says, "Who was the toughest person Stephan has debated against, and why?"
There are a couple. On IP, never anyone yet. There are a couple of people that I could debate on IP that would have somewhat of a challenge, but most of them wouldn't debate. I don't know. I guess well, Jan Helfeld on Minarchy versus Anarchy. Jan's that old 70s relic, 80s relic leftover, Randian libertarian, who is good when he annoys statists like Nancy Pelosi and people like that by pestering them with repeated monomaniacal questions. But when he does it to us, he's doing it from anarchy point of view. So he's like something like if you're alone in the desert, if you're in the desert with someone else and there's one bottle of water and you it's not enough for both of you, what would you do? So he poses these questions like these lifeboat questions where basically there's tragedy. There's no good solution. And that's supposed to be some kind of argument that we need a government. I don't know how government's supposed to stop tragedy from happening, because lots of governments fail to do that too.
Or they create tragedy.
Yeah. I guess I can't think of any good debates I've had with anyone I felt that stumped by.
Wow, we gotta get you in some better debates, Stephan.
Yeah, I usually hate debate formats because they're so stilted and boring. I'd prefer to have a free for all, but most other people don't want that. They want this boring debate format. But hey, I'm open to anything.
Yeah, it's always about the Oxford debates now. Everybody likes those. I mean, even Dave Smith enjoys the Oxford debates these days. I'm like, come on, man, you're a stand-up comedian.
I guess I would say that I've had several challenging discussions with people. They weren't quite debates. And probably the most challenging ones I've had have been people questioning me on argumentation ethics. Like I think Steve Patterson, we had one. And there are some difficult questions in argumentation ethics that are hard to answer in a short format. I'd say my worst performance was probably when I was on the Stossel show on IP, because I only had like 3 minutes, and he just started out with this like, how am I supposed to make money on my show? People can rip off my show. And to unpack the assumptions there would take an hour, so I didn't really have a canned answer ready that was satisfying. I could have just said, "Suck it up. Your show might not make it."
Yeah.
I could have said that, but that wouldn't have gone over well.
Well, and you could have just answered with, "Listen, John, nobody can do that mustache besides Tom Selleck, anyways, buddy. You're gonna be all right."
Yeah, I could have dodged it with some humor.
Yeah, he likes to do that. I like John, but he gets a little, it's kind of funny. And he does that to libertarians all the time. Top Lobster, who's the man who does all the art for the show, he's wonderful. He says, is ridicule the best way to discourage theft of, let's say, artwork? Because someone, he makes a lot of really good shirts. He hand draws everything. And there's been a guy who's been like stealing his designs and then putting them on his website and using his designs. So is ridicule the best way to deal with that, man? What do you think?
Well, I would never call it stealing.
Sure.
It's copying. So you're saying, what's the best way to keep people from copying information that you put out in the public? So I don't know if there's a good way to stop people from. If you make something public, it's like you tell people information. What's the best way to keep them from learning what you told them? I guess not to tell them in the first place. Keep it secret. But I think if people are copying your stuff and not giving you credit, or they're sort of hiding the fact that they copied it from someone, or they're pretending that they're the author, I think, ridicule could work. They're going to have a bad reputation. Just point it out that this guy is lying. I suspect that that's not what's going on, though. I suspect what he's talking about is people that are just using his designs without his permission. They're probably not pretending that they did it, though. I don't know. Maybe he can explain. And in that case, if they're just using it without his permission, I don't know if there's anything wrong with that. So I don't know if ridicule would work. It might work now because most people believe that copying is stealing, so they're ripping something off. But I don't think that that's correct. And I think in a copyright-free world, there would be no stigma attached whatsoever to copying any public information and reusing it and competing with the original guy. There would only be stigma involved in dishonesty, like pretending you're the original author.
Sure. Rodrigo Neves, this is one of my Brazilian followers. I got a lot of really cool Brazilian followers on Twitter, and I appreciate you guys a lot. I just want to tell you, he said, Stephan, talk about the Brazilian bucket challenge. Josh, Brazil had the biggest liberty movement in the world. Stephan knows all about it. Peace. So you did this bucket head challenge for Brazil.
Yeah, these Brazilian guys, and there do seem to be a lot of them out there, and they're all great. They've translated a lot of my works. They had me down to Brazil for a conference. I was invited 2 other times, but I couldn't go. And they asked me, Mr. Kinsella, would you please put a bucket on your head? I thought maybe the Spanish or the Portuguese wasn't being translated right, and they meant something else. And they said, no, I want you to put a bucket on your head. I'm like, a real bucket? Like a plastic mop bucket? Yeah. And I was like, why? I was a little suspicious it was some kind of neo-Nazi thing.
Oh, sure.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
But the guy assured me, he goes, no, it's just for fun. So I said, okay, what the fuck? So I did it and sent him the pictures, and he liked it.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the pictures right now. That's a pretty good kitchen bucket. But I want to explain it a little more because this is actually a really cool thing. And I guess you didn't know about what they were actually.
I did not until tonight when you explained it to me. I didn't quite know what it was.
Yeah, so he explained it to me. He said the idea was to say that there were some hidden chapters and mentions of bucket on some of Hoppe's and Mises's books. He doesn't remember exactly which at the moment, but there weren't any. But the catch is to have Liberty people actually reading the books in order to understand the meme and also to troll a little. So they came and asked you to do it. Of course, you probably have read all these books and know that there's no mentions of buckets. So
I don't recall any bucket mention in Hoppe's books. No,
but it's pretty cool. That's actually a pretty good idea. You're like, you tell people that there's something in these books. Now they're looking for it. They're reading the books. They're important books. They should be reading. You should all be reading Human Action and the Democracy, the God That Fell, at the very least. And for me, it's everything Rothbard's ever written. I'm a huge, I've been reading. Rothbard was what got me into this movement. For New Liberty changed my entire life. It's kind of like a window you open and you just can't close it again. You know what I mean? It's like once you crawl through it.
Yeah, I was rereading For New Liberty recently, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I did early on. But The Ethics of Liberty is probably my favorite political book by him. And combined with Power and Market, I think if someone wants a good introduction to Rothbard, what I really think is the best thing to read by him, is a book that was called The Logic of Action 1 and 2 when it came out, but it was republished under a different title for copyright reasons. I think I think it's called Economic Controversies.
Oh, sure.
That's
yeah.
a really good sample of a lot of his economic analysis. Instead of reading Man, Economy, and State, which is sort of like a systematic treatise, that's a really good one. And another good one on a more popular level is one that Rockwell and Rothbard co-edited and co-wrote in the 80s. It's called The Free Market Reader. It was a selection of stuff they wrote in this newsletter called The Free Market, which used to be published by the Mises Institute. That's really good too as an introduction. It's sort of like on the lines of Hazlitt's Economics 1 lesson.
Yeah.
On the level.
If you really like essays, this one is probably my favorite. Egalitarianism is a revolt against nature. It's a good one.
Yes.
Very good. I have a lot more books than this, but they're at my mom's for some reason in Oregon. Send me my books, Mom. So Stephan, we're getting to the end of this thing here. Of course, we're going to go do an exclusive stream where we'll talk about funny shit like your scooter ride with Sam Ruff. But what's next for you, man? What do you got coming up?
Well, I am thinking about putting together a selection of my own favorite anarchist essays, similar to what Michael Malice just did in his Anarchist Handbook. Because as soon as he published it, I thought of the ones I would have also included. Many of the ones he included, I would have included, but some other ones. So I might put that together as a little book because that seemed to be popular and people seem to like that. And then I'm going to finally finish my edited selection of my own stuff called Law and Libertarian World. And then I want to because my book on IP came out about 20 years ago. And in the meantime, I've written a lot of things elaborating on it and come up with different arguments because people keep coming up with different attempts to justify IP. So I want to do a brand new book from scratch on IP, which has all the other stuff but some additional stuff. And I'm going to call that Copy This Book. And I've got some other book projects in mind too, so I'm basically mostly retired. I mean, I'm part-time. I'm only working about 5 or 10 hours a week on patent law stuff. So I have plenty of time now to devote towards just libertarian traveling and speaking and writing and having fun with it. So that's kind of where I am right now with my libertarian pursuits and projects.
Nice. Neocon Remover is going to be very happy. Mr. Burt Grimm's going to be very happy to see you put out a book called Copy This Book. He's probably going to do it, and then he's going to sell it, and he's going to make tons of money, I'm sure. But
he's welcome to do it. I would be happy if he did that.
Hey, just going to get you a little more attention, right?
He can even put his name on it if he wants. I don't care.
You live in the principles, man. Live in the principles. Stephan, I'm a huge fan. I really appreciate you, brother. Can you tell everyone where they can support you, how they can find you, where they can buy your books, all that great stuff?
Yeah, I don't want support. I'm my own benefactor, and that's fine. I just like I don't have ads or anything. I just like to do my stuff for the movement. But if you want to read my stuff, it's at stephankinsella.com, and my IP stuff is at c4sif.org. C the number 4, and I'm at NS. My first name is Norman, so I'm NS Kinsella everywhere, like on Twitter and Facebook. NS Kinsella.
Nice. I do want you to support me, and I do want your super chats because I do have 7 kids that I have to support, and a fiance who stays home with them. So there's 8. That's 8 dependents if you're counting. It's a lot. I do a lot. But Mr. Kinsella, I appreciate you. Please stick around, and we will have our exclusive stream here in about 3 or 4 minutes. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Man, he's so knowledgeable. I can't keep up. I'm not very good with the law stuff, but he's amazing, and I'm glad that he came on and explained everything for you guys. He's really awesome. Side, thank you so much for the super chat. I will keep up the good fight. They'll never stop me. I'm the blue collar man on a mission, so it's gonna keep going forever. Guys, check out my sponsors at lorenzotti.coffee for all your delicious Italian coffee needs delivered directly to your door. Bring the taste of Italy home. Use BTC at checkout for a 10% discount. Of course, the man, the myth, the legend, toplobster.com for all your graphic design needs, where you can get this awesome dark camo custom hoodie with a Break the Cycle sunset logo on it. Use BTC at checkout, or join Patreon, Subscribestar. Both of them are the websites / Break the Cycle JS. You guys can get all kinds of really cool stuff there. You can also get into a Discord chat where Top Lobster drops all of his brand new designs 2 weeks early, and you get them at like a 30% discount. So we're talking really cheap $20 hoodies, really, really cheap shirts for like $12 to $15, and he's got the best designs, man. He just put out a really cool free Ross Ulbricht shirt that I hope everyone will buy. I think it's up on the website now. It's no longer in the deep discount mode. And of course, executive producer of the show, anthemplanning.com, for all your emergency and crisis planning needs. Check them out today. See what they can do for your business, personal life, or home. They're doing a job that the government sucks at for a much cheaper price and much more efficiently. Guys, coming up on the show, let's see. What do we got going on here? Tomorrow, my good friend, I love saying this every time, my good friend Tom Woods will be on the show to defend his terrible views on Hawaiian shirts. It's going to be awesome. We'll ask how his podcast failed so miserably. Of course, I don't mean any of that. It's going to be a good show. Tom's great. Hopefully, I'm going to try to convince him to drink while he's on the show. Also, on Thursday, Brad Palumbo from Fee. That's going to be a cool show. We got a lot of things to catch up on. I'm going to see if we can get him to eat the dreaded ketchup banana. You guys might find out about that on the show. And, of course, Friday, Mr. Austin Peterson will be on the show to talk about trolling people for liberty. We're kind of kindred spirits when it comes to that. Guys, if you want these exclusive streams that I'm doing every single night after the show, check out the join link under any of my videos on my channel. It's going to be, it just says join. If not, you can scroll all the way up to the top of the live chat here. I dropped the link there when I first started. For some reason, my social media buttons are not working on my Stream Deck tonight. I'm probably going to have to reset all that stuff. But you can join that to watch them live right after these streams end. Or you can join the Patreon and Subscribestar where you get some other cool swag and also get those exclusive streams uploaded the next day after I do them. But guys, I will see you tomorrow for a very exciting show with Mr. Tom Woods. Until then, don't forget to break the cycle.
Due to legal reasons, I just have to explain. The lyrics of my last song may seem to contain a violent call to action in the verse and refrain, but I just meant it in Minecraft. The helicopter part was in reference to GTA 5 and the things you do. So any violence you commit, I am not an excuse, because I just meant it in Minecraft. Well, Chipper is my friend and he's constantly cold. Accusations of incitement getting totally old. Make your own choices, yeah, you have control, because I just meant it in Minecraft. Obviously, I would never advocate force, unless there's due process and a trial, of course. And if you're convicted, we will make you a corpse in Minecraft, just in Minecraft. Nothing I mean, you know it. No product theaters gets it close to COVID.